What is a witch? I noticed that when he said the word, it was marked with disapproval. Why should that be? Why? Isn't the ability to communicate with the invisible world, to keep constant links with the dead, to care for others and heal, a superior gift of nature that inspires respect, admiration, and gratitude? Consequently, shouldn't the witch, if that's what the person who has this gift is to be called, be cherished and revered rather than feared? What would the world be like without us? What would it be like? Men hate us, and yet without us, their lives would be sad and narrow. Thanks to us, they can change the present and sometimes read the future. Thanks to us, they can hope. Tituba, we are the salt of the earth. Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Yamin and this is my take on things. Today I'm going to be reviewing I, Tituba, Black Witch of Salem by Maryse Conde. If this is the first time you are joining me on this particular series where I review books, then let me give you a backstory. Last month I read the book The Crucible by Arthur Miller. In that book, a bunch of people were hung for witchcraft in Massachusetts. And while I was reading that book, I actually mentioned during the review that I noticed a character called Tituba who was supposed to be the slave, a black slave, and was supposed to be under the care of Samuel Parris, who was the reverend, the major reverend in that book. And what was interesting to me was the fact that it seemed, at that time I felt like everything started with Tituba, but it seems like in the history they just pushed her aside and she was just one black slave who was accused, and then she turned around and accused other people, and then she was basically forgotten about. Maryse Conde, who wrote I, Tituba, Black Witch of Salem, actually felt almost exactly the same way, because she felt like in the history books they did not do justice to Tituba's story. When I found out that this book existed, I was like, you know what, I'm going to read this next so that it's still fresh in our memories and so we can compare. This is not to say that because this comparison is being done, then everything in this book should be taken as truth or fact. Most of the book is fiction and it is based on Maryse Conde's interpretation of the life and times of Tituba based on her research. Guys, if you do not like spoilers, I think this is actually the time when you should probably not watch this video to the end, because I'm about to get into the book. Tituba was a product of rape between a slave master and her mother, Abena. The book is basically talking about how Tituba is able to navigate through life alone at first, and then with John Indian, who happened to be her partner and later husband. It talks about how she came to be told that the use of the elements to suit yourself or to help others to heal, to provide for yourself basically, was a crime, was an offense, and was negative, and it was not to be done. So it shows Tituba's resilience through life, having to navigate the world as a black, mixed race, mind you, slave who was alone, even though she thought she wasn't most of the time. So the way I have chosen to review this book is by going through the themes, the major themes of the book, and then talking about some major characters and how they are kind of like a mirror of society now. And then lastly, I will read some quotes which I felt like really touched me when I was reading the book. So first off, I'm going to talk about love. Tituba is painted as this loving person who just easily falls in love. She has a soft heart, she has a kind heart, and she cannot just bear to see people suffering, even if these people are supposed to be, in quote, her enemies. but as long as she sees someone suffering, she just cannot help herself, but she has to help. I feel like Tituba's problem started from this whole idea of love. After her parents died or after they were killed, she was alone most of the time before she met John Indian, and that's when her whole life changed, because Tituba could have lived her years in West Indies without having any of the issues that came up after she met John Indian. But because of that love, because of that, oh, I love this man and I'm going to go to the ends of the earth with him, I feel like that is where this book hit for me, because it was just all about love. The way people react to how they love might be different from how you react. You might be more rational in your reaction towards love, but it doesn't mean that other people are. So I couldn't blame her too much. I just like, okay, well, as long as you were happy doing what you were doing, then. Now another theme is about slavery. So this book talks about slavery, what the slaves had to go through, how they had to live. Like most of us hear about slavery today and just like, oh, it's just one ancient thing that happened 400 years ago, like, you know, get over it, you know. But until you actually read some of these books that display or try to communicate the level of suffering that these people had to go through, you might not necessarily appreciate what the fight is now. So reading this book, obviously I've always appreciated what the fight is, but reading this book, it puts into perspective a lot of things about revolution, things about fighting the power, things about rebellions. Like, it puts into perspective, because you're trying to look at, oh, this is where this all started. And even at that time, even with how they were oppressed and outnumbered, they still wanted to fight. They were still willing to die for the cause, and that was really, really inspiring for me. And when I read this book, I was like, yeah, this is what I like to see. Third theme that I was going to be talking about today is witchcraft. Now, should we say witchcraft now or tradition? Because I feel like when the white man came with their whole colonization, a lot of things that was our nature was discarded, and it was seen as negative, it was seen as pagan, it was seen as demonic. Now this particular theme for me is still an existential question, because I am a Christian, and I ask myself, okay, why do I think certain things about my culture, about my tradition, where I come from, is not right? Is it because I actually rationally have looked into this and decided that it is not right, or because this is what I have been told? When you do certain things, you are not communing with God anymore, you're not communing with nature, you're communing with the devil. Or when you use certain herbs and everything, which is the basis of medicine and science, you are seen as unrefined or as pagan or as doing something evil. Yes, there's the Christian faith, but there's also the brainwashing of the white man. So the question here is, that I ask myself on a daily basis, is, I'm not saying I want to go and start practicing how to use herbs, because, you know, that time has passed, but why do we see it with a negative connotation? Why is it that in our minds we see somebody who does this and I'm like, oh, you know, they're a herbalist or a native doctor? And the thing is, it's not just that they are those things, but we have given those names negative connotations, right? So I keep asking myself, and you out there, please let me know what you think about this, because this is our tradition, this is our culture, right? I feel like if you're not doing anything wrong, there are so many things that we used to do that were totally wrong. I remember in history we talk about the killing of twins and so many other like really nasty things. It's good that those things were abolished and eradicated, but what about the good things about our culture? Why do we have to also relinquish those things because we have to live like our colonizers? Why? It is the major thing about this book. It's about witchcraft, about how people were accused, albeit innocent. They were accused and they were killed without even blinking, even without evidence, without proof. Like we talked about this in the Crucible, so I don't want to go through all that again. Now the fourth thing is mixed race, right? Now I'm adding this to the theme because while I was reading this book, I had to ask myself, why was Tituba so easy to love the white man? What was that thing that was just in her that felt like, you know what, everybody can be loved? this is what the ideal world is supposed to be. Like, we're not supposed to be thinking about, oh, because of the color of her skin, then she deserves my love more than this other person. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that, talking about a slave who had suffered so much at that time, why was she still willing to help? Why? I had to ask myself, why did she still love Betsy and Elizabeth and all the people who wronged her even up to the end? Was it because she was part white? I'm postulating that it is because she was part white and she could feel the pain of both sides. That's how I want to look at it. And like I said, it's a postulation, and if you disagree with me, if you've read this book and you disagree with me, please leave it in the comment section. I want to know your take too. But I feel like she could feel the pain of both sides, and that's something that is like, come walk a mile in my shoes and you will see how things are. Okay, you stay on your high horse and say, oh, there is no white privilege, there's no this, there's no that, I'm white, I don't see any privilege. Okay, come be black then. You know, like, let's exchange bodies for like a day and let's see how you feel about that. I feel like the people who are in the middle, who feel like, oh, they're part of this and they're part of that, are able to actually balance both sides and be like, okay, yeah, I get what both sides feel, because to the white people, I would never be white, and to the black people, I understand the struggle. Yeah, and the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the themes in this book is the dead and the afterlife. Now, if you've read this book, you would notice that Tituba had the power to allow people talk with their loved ones that they've lost. Now, this was really interesting to me again, because how many of you have had this existential crisis question where you're like, okay, what happens after death? Yeah, so we know what we believe as Christians. We know what our faith is, that, you know, there's this eternity with God out there that is awaiting us. And yeah, that's good, and it's, you know, it's hopeful. But then again, sometimes certain things just creep into your mind and like, okay, what if it's just complete oblivion? I do not know if I have a problem with that, because I'm just like, well, like, I've gone through this life, I have struggled, I've hustled, so you know what, why don't I just rest in peace, you know? But in this book, they really brought to life the core African tradition, where you're like, oh, your ancestors never leave you, they're always around you, they're always protecting you, they're always with you, basically. And it was refreshing just to see that even though Tituba was alone most of the time, she was never really alone. She always had a father and a mother and her Mama Yaya, who was like her mentor. She always had them with her. She could always call on them when she needed them, and that was really nice to know, because a lot of people are going through this whole loneliness and this whole depression, and you just feel like, oh, there's nobody in the world for you. And I just imagine if Tituba did not have this power to conjure this spirits of her loved ones, would she have survived that long? Three characters that really struck me, and how they represent, how they're like a mirror of what the society is today, especially the black community. Now we have Christopher, we have John Indian, and we have Iphigenie. I hope I get I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Iphigenie or Iphigene or Iphigenie, I don't know. So John Indian, yeah, I was coming to John Indian. That now, John Indian was an opportunist. He was smart. Like, I get people reading this book and be like, oh, you traitor, you should have stuck with Tituba till the end. But the truth is, in all the things that Tituba did, how did that help her? You know, she ended up suffering and going through hell just because she felt like, oh, she had some kind of moral high ground where she wanted to stand on. Now, I admire that a lot. But I'm just going to talk from the point of view of John Indian for a second and be like, okay, most of us in society today are John Indian, right? We see a certain problem, or you know what, if if you cannot beat them, you join them. Is it to say master? I will say master, as long as eventually I get what I want. As long as I'm wearing the finest of clothes and I'm eating the good food and I'm able to talk with people, I'm able to drink wine and, you know, have fun, I can pretend for a second that I really care about these masters so that I can gain favors in their sight. Now, you watching, I'm not going to go too much into the analysis of this. This is a description that you know around you. This is not even talking about the race war right now, or black against white and whatnot. It's talking about a person's character generally. Like, there's some people at your office that they never want to stand up for what is right. Oh, the boss said this. Okay, are you going to say something? Are you going to, you know, oppose that? Are you going to say, okay, no, this is wrong? No, you're going to take the side of the boss. And then they'll come and gossip with you and be like, can you imagine what the boss just did? Oh my god. But okay, do you want to come with me? Let's go confront this person. No, you are never going to. So that is John Indian, right? So before you judge John Indian too much, ask yourself if you are not John Indian. And even if you are not John Indian 100%, hasn't there been times where you were John Indian? Now, the second character I want to talk about is Christopher. Now, Christopher is supposed to be like a symbol of revolution for the black people and the slaves in the West Indies at the time, and he was supposed to be the leader of the opposition who were trying to, you know, but guess what? He was bought, right? You know, at the end of the book, I don't want to spoil it for you, but at the end of the book there was a part where, like, who betrayed us, right? Who betrayed us? I suspected Christopher. I'm sure Tituba suspected Christopher as well, but they did not really go deep into, okay, showing us how that happened, because the whole book was told from Tituba's point of view, obviously. So I feel like definitely Christopher was the one who sold them out. And now this is again very interesting for me, because look at the fight, look at the revolution, look at the Black Lives Matter protest of last year. Like, a lot of people will say, oh yes, they are going to fight for the cause, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I remember a lot of people who were just like social media activists, and then the point where he's like, you know what, why don't we go fight? Why don't we go protest? Why don't we go to the street and hold a placard and say, you know what, no, we're not going to stand for this? And they were like, you know, I just realized that I have, like, you know, an appointment on that same day, you know, so I would probably sit this one out. Right? That's just one side of things. And then there are the people who actually go protest, they hold the placards, they are the leaders of the protests. But then when it comes to, okay, you know what, we've been fighting, we've been protesting, now it's time for them to meet our demands, and then the leader is telling you, you know what, guys, you just need to calm down. You know, in things like this, you have to approach it diplomatically, you have to use your wisdom, and, you know, let's sit down and have a, you know, closed door dialogue with these oppressors. That is Christopher. He had the ideologies, I'm pretty sure, because we didn't really delve too much into Christopher's stories. He had the ideologies. I'm sure he was the one who was probably the best orator. Yes, we have to fight the power. And then when it actually came to a point where that revolution could have actually changed a lot of things for the people of West Indies at the time, he sold them out. That's Christopher. So again, before you judge him, ask yourself, are you not a Christopher? Right? Somebody who is not willing to actually do the work for this revolution that we speak about every day, or somebody who is actually acting like they do the work, but their goals, they have ulterior motives, so that they want to just get to the people in power so that they can, you know, probably get a political position or something. Ask yourself. Now, the last person I want to talk about is Iphigenia, and in as much as I admired him, I felt like he was an ideologist, right? Oh, we're gonna die for the cause, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And yes, again, there are people like that, but the question here is, was he wise enough? Was he smart enough to be able to carry on that kind of revolution? Was it too early? You know, sometimes you want to fight, but if you just wait one day, or if you wait one more week, another set of knowledge can come to you that makes you do things in a different way. So in as much as I admired the Figini and I admired his courage and his determination, I felt like he was too rash, he was too hot-tempered, he was too, let's do this, let's burn everything to the ground, and you know, did not care about whether or not you were going to kill children or anything like that. And I'm all for revolution, but at the point where innocent lives are lost, I don't know, you know, I don't know. People will have this argument that, oh, what about them, they've killed our own children and they've killed blood kills blood and kills blood. Like, when does the killing end? You know, when does the hatred end? We have to find a way of stopping this hatred, and we have to find a better way of doing things. We have to find a smarter way of doing things. And just to mention again, I said it was fiction, most of it actually. So Maryse Conde, when Tituba returned to the West Indies towards the end or the middle of the book, those are just basically from Conde's imagination. She wrote the story from that point to the end, because she says that no account of Tituba was given in the history books after she was sold when she got out of prison. Now, when the witches were pardoned, the slaves were not set free because they were still slaves, right? They were just not imprisoned slaves. So they still had to be sold. And the person who bought her in this book was Benjamin, the Jewish man. That was just a figment of Conde's imagination, because the history books do not actually tell us who bought Tituba after she left prison. There was one thing, however, that I didn't know. Evil is a gift received at birth. There is no acquiring it. Those of us who have not come into this world armed with spurs and fangs are losers in every combat. The slaves who flocked off the ships in droves and whose gait, features and carriage the good people of Bridgetown mocked were far freer than I was. For the slaves had not chosen their chains. They had not walked of their own accord toward a raging, awe-inspiring sea to give themselves up to the slave dealers and bend their backs to the branding iron. That is exactly what I had done. You may be surprised that I shiver at the idea of death, but that's the ambiguity of people like us. Our body is mortal, and we are therefore prey to every torment of the common mortal. Like them, we fear suffering. Like them, we are frightened of the terrible antechamber that ends our life on earth. However certain we are that the doors will open before us onto another form of life, this time eternal, we are nevertheless racked with anguish. Okay guys, so if you're following me and reading with me, know that I'm reading this book next. This is called Binti, the Complete Trilogy by Nnedi Okorafor. Now, I read Nnedi's book, Who Fears Death, and I was in love with that book, even though I kind of did not like the ending. But this book is one of her really popular best-selling books, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Now, it's a bit longer than what I've been reading before. Like, the past 3 books have been really short. So guys, if I'm unable to post a review in the next month, just know that I'll try to do that in like a month and a half. Okay, and I try to be as fast as I can. So guys, read with me Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. Thank you so much guys for watching this video, and don't forget to like. Guys, if you like my video, if you liked what I talked about, if you have your own comments, and if you feel like I should do more book reviews, please hit that like button right now. Like right now, hit that like button. And comment in the comment section what you think about this book. If you have read it, if you haven't, would you like to read it? I tried not to give too much spoilers, but go ahead and read it and come back and give your opinions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.